Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on conceal carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast. I'm Pete Mitchell.
And I'm Dan Sams.
And this episode is being brought to you by Fast OC. Fast OC is a great training company. I've done many of their trainings, their handgun challenges. They're out of Orange County, California. So if you're in Orange County, California, if you've got to renew your CCW, go ahead and look to them. They've got classes on that, I want to say weekly. They've got all kinds of training classes that are just fantastic. And their handgun challenges, I do those every month. I'm able to do them. They do them usually at Evans Gun Range in Orange, and they are a blast. Just as a side note, Dan, I'll be going to theirs this Friday, and It's going to be a two-gun challenge. It's going to be AR and pistol. So,
heck yeah.
I mean, hey, anytime you get to transition from AR to pistol, it's just cool. That's all there is to
Yeah, man.
it.
Yeah, I know. By the way, we were gonna talk about a few different guns that we're recommending. There is one particular for that I'm gonna recommend in a minute. So that's awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah, and see what I love too. We were just talking about this before the show. I go, Dan, you got to talk about the guns that you get to try that those of us behind enemy lines here in California we get to hear about, but we don't get to buy as easily, and in some cases at all. So
yeah, man.
But before we get to that, I know you had some stories that you wanted to share. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, man.
With that?
Well, I think on the last episode, I might have told I told one of my concealment stories, and I think I told the one about the Nerf guns. Yes,
you did.
That was my last time.
Yeah.
So I have a really interesting story about a time when I should have been carrying and wasn't. And it's one of my funnest stories because some people know I do some ministry to ex-gang members right now in my church work. And so they've got some, real life stories. And so when I told them this, they thought it was the most hilarious things. So we were doing some work in urban Cleveland, running a community garden for refugees. And I would go once a week and kind of check on the garden. Usually somebody was with me, and usually I would carry. And because it's about the worst part of Cleveland you can go to, maybe second worst. And we knew there was a crack house kind of on the corner, and so we just did our thing, talked to them every now and then, but tried not to cause any stir. Well, this particular day I pull onto the street. I'm alone, which I shouldn't have been, but I was alone because it was a busy day and I just needed to check the garden and move on. Not only am I alone, but I wasn't carrying. As I pull onto the street, you can tell it's collection day. There's probably 3 or 4 guys that weren't normally there. There are prostitutes crying on the corner, and I'm like, oh man, stuff is going down. This is not good. But I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna drive up, check the garden, get the heck out of Dodge. So I drive past the crack house, pull up my car, jump out, and I go and check the garden real quick. As I'm checking the garden, I'm thinking I'm gonna be 2 to 5 minutes, and I'm gonna get the heck out of there. As I'm checking the garden, a car comes from the other direction, and as it's coming, a woman, probably a prostitute from the looks of her, jumps out, and she starts yelling at the guys on the crack house on the other side of me and says, "Hey, GB, don't hurt me. I don't have your money." And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like in the movies. These pimps are going to come and shake down this hooker for money. And I am literally in between them right now. And so they come walking up to her, and there's some altercation. And there's 3 big old guys, and I'm thinking, man, if it was one of them, I could maybe kind of get in the way, give her some time to get away. I don't have a gun on me. This is not a good situation to be in. But there's 3 of them. And so I start praying. I'm praying about what should I do, and I'm really all I've got at this point is prayer and then the crazy kamikaze run. And so as I'm praying, the prostitute says, "Don't hurt me. That man over there sees you." And she's indicating towards me,
pointing at you.
And I'm like,
I love it.
Oh my gosh, I am a witness now, and I am the one scrawny little guy here with no defense, and I shouldn't have been in that situation. I should have been carrying, I should have been ready, and I wasn't. Now, the good news of it is they let her go. They actually, it went to some physical altercation. They pushed her, but whatever it was, they eventually let her go. Nobody gets hurt. As they're walking past, because they've got to walk past me coming back, as they're walking by me, I don't know what to do. It's a terrible, awkward situation. So I just go, hey guys! Like I'm Ned Flanders or something. And they just go on their merry way. Now, funny side story, the police raided that place a matter of days later, shut it down. We've not had a problem on that street since then. So that was great news. But when I tell my dudes who are, formerly of that lifestyle, that story, they think it's the most hilarious thing that some scrawny, pale guy is like, hey guys. And so every now and then, that's how they mess with me. They'll be like, oh yeah, how's it going, Dan? And they'll be like, hey guys. So that was my...
Well, it begs the question, man. I got to ask, what do you, I carry all the time. Literally all the time. If you see me in public, know that at minimum I have one firearm and one backup magazine on me, minimum, at any given time. What for you determines, okay, I'm going to carry today, I'm not going to carry today? Yeah. I mean, what goes through your head for that?
So this situation was really interesting because it was when I first started carrying. And I just gotten my conceal. It's been 3 or 4 years ago. And so part of it at that point is I just hadn't gotten used to carrying. Now, for me, in my two different worlds that I live in, I do business work and then I run a ministry. And there are times when I'm in situations as a minister that I'm just not going to carry. If I had to draw and shoot in this situation, I think it would be a difficult, not what I want to be known for here. And so there's been a couple of times where as a pastor, I'm not carrying in a particular scenario. But there's a lot to do with that. The other thing is if I know I'm going to spend my entire day in a place where I'm not able to have it, then I don't carry. But for the most part, I like to carry. And I'll leave it in my car. We have a few places that are just where I actually have to go through metal detectors to do a couple of things, business and ministry wise. And so if I know I'm going to do that and I'm going to be most of the day there, I'm going to have it in my car or I'm not going to carry. So that's the biggest thing. Honestly, it's the hassle of where I'm not allowed to carry. That's the biggest hindrance. And I hate that. I wish I could just carry everywhere. And in some cases, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but in some cases I'm like, if they don't know I'm carrying and nobody's checking, it doesn't really matter, And,
I understand because that's the thought that always goes through my mind when it's like, okay, seriously, first of all, you can't legally pat me down, so it's more of a hassle for me to go take everything off, leave it in the car. And then I just always feel awkward because you're like, that's the one time you're going to need it. Like for me, that's the thought that's always going through my head. Not carrying is like thinking you have enough time to put the seatbelt on right before a crash. Like
you're exactly
if
right.
you know you're going to crash, then you don't go down the road. You avoid the area, whatever. It's the same thing with carrying. Like the whole reason for carrying is because you don't know. It's the question that's out there. It's the what if scenario. And I get it. Obviously, if you got to go through metal detectors, then of course you don't carry. And I don't know what it's like in Ohio, but here in California, we've got gun-free zones, which of course is where the mass shootings have happened.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's going to be schools. And interestingly enough, I'm going to talk about this real quick. One of my best friends is definitely much more liberal than I am. Like I am so conservative. I am like, I can't stand Republicans because they're too liberal for me. Like I am so far conservative that it's kind of ridiculous most of the time.
I've been saying that really we have the choice between two socialist parties.
Yeah, we do.
And that's really where we're at right now. And so I'm the same way. I don't fit in with either of them.
Right. Yeah. And but my other buddy, he lives in Long Beach. He's definitely an LA County kind of guy. He works in the school district. He's in the school union. He's a teacher, right? So, he's definitely much more liberal. He probably has voted straight Democrat for forever.
Yeah.
And so we were out one night for dinner, And he's like, hey, are you carrying now? And I'm like, well, technically I can't carry when I know I'm going to consume an alcoholic beverage. And, I know when the two of us are getting together, I'm having a beer. So I'm not carrying right now. And which, interestingly enough, I have my own feelings about that as well. But that's totally different subject for this. So he was just like, yeah. And so I asked him, I go, well, what do you think about the whole, should teachers be armed and all of that? and his viewpoint, he's totally against it for a lot of reasons. But I came to realize in our conversation, and I said this to him, I go, see, I think the difference is you see a gun as an offensive weapon, whereas me and most of the people who I associate with, we see guns as defensive weapons.
Yep.
And that's our difference in viewpoint. And that's why the two sides are clashing. Like, you see it as you get upset at these kids and you don't want to have a gun because you're afraid you might pull it out and shoot one of them for being an a-hole to you. And I'm looking at it going, that thought would never cross my mind that I would pull out a gun and shoot someone because I'm angry. Like, I would shoot someone in self-defense or in defense of my family. And that's pretty much the only choices or the only times I would. Like, if you're robbing a place, I mean, one of the things that I learned in the training that I've done, if you're robbing a place with a gun, take it, man. I don't give a rip. 99% of the time, all I want is to rob the stuff. Take it. Take all that money. I don't care. The second you pull a gun out, you've now forced the other guy to make the choice, am I going to shoot or not? And maybe he's like, hey, I'm not going back to prison, whatever. I mean, you've raised the level. So to me, I'm like, look, if you're robbing it, rob it. If I think you're going to shoot one of my kids, you're done. You're toast. It's over.
I'm the same way. Well, you and I come from a perspective where human life has a value. And even the miscreant, I'm like, my car is not worth his life. Now, I'm going to be pissed if he takes my car. We're going to have all kinds of problems. It's not good. But like, I'm not going to shoot a man over property. But I will use force, lethal force, even to defend my family. And part of that even comes from that same view. Because I value human life so much, especially the life of my children, and I have been placed as a shepherd over them, it's my job to use force to protect them. And I'm with you. I'm 100% in the same thing. Especially, like, I think that mentality of seeing guns as a defensive measure, and man, the opposite side has no context for that.
Right? Yeah. That's really.
In fact, so many times they almost think that it's an emanating evil somehow. I have a buddy of mine who he works in a law office, and he's a veteran. He's really pro Second Amendment, and he works with somebody who is like so far the opposite. And this person had a relative that had died and had guns, and so they were physically afraid to even like come near them. And my friend's like, you probably ought to clear it, make sure that there's nothing in it. You don't want a gun that might be loaded just laying around as people are going in and out around the house, especially if there's kids around. And so they were too scared to touch it. So they're inviting him over. And I'm like, okay, so yeah, you should be trained before you pick it up. But like, we can go over some basic safety so that you can know even how to approach this weapon that isn't yours, that's been left by your grandfather. And but it's funny, they didn't want to touch it. They didn't they almost like they thought they were going to get some gun disease by being in proximity.
Well, it's funny. Like, in my house, my rule of thumb is the gun is always loaded with one in the chamber. So everything in my house, 100% loaded, one in the chamber. Every single hand. Like, I don't have to wonder, how do I approach this gun? Because I don't want to make that mistake of thinking it was empty and then all of a sudden, oh, crap, no, it wasn't empty. So I just have the mindset, everything is loaded because I know it's loaded. Not even the whole treat it as if it's loaded. Like, I literally know it's loaded. So, but at the same time, because I've got young kids, everything in my house is in safes. I don't do the whole, hey, I'm going to put it up here, this high shelf, they can't get to it. I don't have a problem with that. I understand why some people do that. But I'm just like, look, I'm going to have it locked up. One, it's in California. I think it's a law, which, we got a law for everything out here. But
you guys can't even have gas cans out there.
dude, it's so ridiculous, man. We have the highest gas prices in the nation, and it goes up by 4 cents on the first because of another tax that kicked in. Because we're just, man, and people always go, why don't you move? Because I love my wife, and I'd have to move without her. Otherwise, yes, I would be out of the state in a heartbeat.
Yep.
But yeah, so I mean, yeah, I'm of the mindset that every gun in my house is loaded at all the time. If something happened to me, because my wife actually doesn't know how to use a gun, she won't go to the range with me. She refuses to learn how to use a gun, and that's her choice. I get it. I mean, that's her deal. If something happens to me, somebody has to come over because somebody's going to have to clear all these guns. There's a lot of them.
Yep.
But yeah, so
tell her to call me if something happens to you. I'll be there.
You'll fly on out.
I will help. I'll even smuggle them into the land of the freedom if that's write that into your will, Pete. I'll make sure. Dude, your guns are taken care of.
There are. Yeah, I got to be careful what I say on this podcast because I'm still behind enemy lines, man.
I know, man.
There are firearms that I am actively seeking a second residence outside of California because I would like to I don't even know how to word it, but I can't have them inside the state of California. So
yeah, I feel you, man. Yeah, I would have a hard time with it, man. I know even when I bought for my brother when he got married a few years ago. All the
you're getting married. Here's a gun in case you need it.
Yeah, well, that was what we did. We got him a little 9mm Smith & Wesson M&P Shield, and I bought it here in Ohio and thinking like, well, I know they allow pistols over there. I'll ship it, and it turned out that even that had to have a California compliance something about it. Like he couldn't even have that. All the mess that we went through, and I'm like, I probably should have just bought it in California. He lives, man, he's not too far from you. He's in Glendale.
Oh, yeah. So here's the deal, man. First of all, your father could give it to him.
Really?
Yeah, it's got to come down through basically a parental relationship. Or it has to be on what we call, it's called the roster. So this is the biggest joke ever in California. California has the safe roster of handguns, which is why we are still on Gen 3 Glocks. That if everyone wants to know why does Glock still make all this crap for Gen 3 guns when they're on Gen 5, it's because California, the biggest market, only can have Gen 3s. Like that's what's on the roster.
My heart.
I know, right? I know. So here's the deal. What they did was because they hate guns here, they passed a law basically saying that for you to have a gun on the roster, first it's got to pass all these quote unquote safety tests, which is like it's got to be able to drop without firing and blah, 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 all this other jazz. But the biggie is it has to micro stamp the bullets when you fire it that's linked back to that handgun.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, no one makes that, and no one's going to make that. So that's why we haven't had any new guns added since they started it. I think it was like 2012 or something. And we're still on Gen 3s. And basically, if you want to send that gun from Ohio to your brother in California, it has to be sent to a dealer who cannot give it to him because now it becomes dealer inventory, and dealers can't sell non-rostered guns to anybody in California unless, of course, you want the loophole. The loophole is unless you're a cop or a government employee. Then, of course, none of these rules apply. There is no such thing as a safe handgun to them. And so that's how we legally get this. Like I have a Glock 43, which is an off-roster gun. I had to pay $825 to buy it from a private party, unused, even though everyone else can get it for $450 in the rest of the country because that's the off-roster price. Because anyone knows, hey, I got it in California. You want to buy it off me? You're paying a premium. They're basically doubling. Right now, they've gone down to $825 because the P365 or 360, whatever it is that SIG's got, the new conceal one, which, of course, that's not that's not in California. That's not roster on the roster. So
that's a nice gun, though, by the way.
I bet it is, but you got to pay $1,300 for that, and so that's what drove down the prices of Glock 43s because that gun came out. So, so then you can do it. You can buy it via private party, and a private party in California still has to go through a dealer, but because it's not dealer inventory, I can buy it from a private party, and that's where it's just ridiculous. It has nothing to do with safety. And that's why there's a lawsuit right now that we're waiting to hear the results of. And there's always a lawsuit. There always will be a lawsuit. And I was talking with this one attorney who is a firearms attorney. And he was saying that what California needs to get smart about is they need to file lawsuits like in a jurisdiction that is going to be more in favor of the firearm. So you got to look at the circuit court. And then I'm like, well, how could, Oklahoma fight California's law? And he goes, well, it's simple. They're interfering with interstate commerce, which is part of the Constitution. So you get, whatever circuit that is, which is friendly to gun rights, say, all right, that's an illegal law. And then you got California's Ninth Circuit, which is just as freaking liberal as can be. Yeah. And they're saying, no, it's not. And then you go, look, Supreme Court, you have to make a decision. You have no choice. We've got two federal circuits here saying the opposite things. We need you guys to finally decide. And he goes, that's how you actually get a decision. I'm like, well, why doesn't anybody do it? He's like, no one's smart enough. And I'm like, well, do it. Come on.
You got to get somebody on that. Like, okay, yeah. So you know what? That sounds like a job for Firearm Policy Coalition, if you're familiar with them.
I am, yeah.
They are, man, I'm not going to dog the NRA on here, but they have let me down in some ways. I was lifelong, and I'm just like, man, no, you guys are not stepping up in the way I need you to.
I literally just mailed, they sent me a mailer trying to get money from me. And so, I had the business reply envelope, which as a marketer, I'm like, okay, so I know this is going to cost them like 75 cents, 85 cents. So I wrote him a note, get your house in order. And I stuck that back in the envelope, mailed it back to him.
Oh, I still get calls from them all the time. And I have some stipulations. I'm like, I would love to support you guys. Have historically been reasonably helpful to us, but you're not backing us up right now like you should, and so I'm still thankful for you, but I'm not going to be renewing my membership until I see some things change. And and sometimes when I'm feeling really bold, I'll be like, until I can own fully auto weapons or an Abrams tank, I'm not even interested in your support. And then that's where I've probably gone too far. But no, man, Firearm Policy Coalition, though, they are really doing the legal work for us, and they're thinking smart. This is probably an idea that they should look at a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if they're already working on it, but those guys, they're doing the work, man. I'm thankful for them.
Yeah. No, in California, we've got the California Rifle and Pistol Association, and they're the ones who got us what we affectionately refer to as Freedom Week, when we were able to buy standard capacity magazines. And there was that great whooshing sound as every magazine in the nation was sold out and sucked into California. They were the ones who got that for us. Right now, we've got a big thing that's fighting. I don't know when this episode's going to air, but starting July 1st, as of today, when we're recording this, you're not going to be allowed to buy ammo without a background check.
Oh my gosh.
And then on top of that, if you can believe this crap, the California Department of Justice is going against the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. They're going against their ruling. Their ruling was, okay, you don't have to have a real ID, as opposed to the IDs that say federal limits apply. They're saying you don't have to have that yet in order to purchase firearms, because they know not everyone's got them yet. It's making its way through. Well, California's DOJ said, hey, starting July 1st, we're also going to make it so you got to have a real ID. Well, I don't have a real ID because my license isn't up for renewal, so I'm not going to be able to buy ammo? Are you kidding me? The ATF said that was BS, and still California's like, nah, we don't care. We pretty much don't want anyone to have guns except for us. Man. That's what we deal with out here, man. It's crazy.
Now, I'm going to tell you what you need to not do, Pete.
Please.
You need to not do. Whatever you do, Pete, don't do this.
Okay.
But don't go get any, 80% lower receivers. Don't go stockpiling them. Don't go buying all of the parts to build ARs. Don't go getting yourself any binary triggers. Don't fold any coat hangers in strategic ways.
Does that actually work, the coat hanger thing?
I could neither confirm nor deny, Pete. Here's another thing you don't want to do. You don't want to download Tor browser and look up I don't know if you've heard of the guy who was so mad.
I'm not saying I've heard of the guy. I'm not saying I've already downloaded everything that they had.
Because the guy, that British guy who wrote the book on like how to build a gun out of Home Depot parts. His book is no longer in print, but it was designed for you to just be able to go into a hardware store and essentially make a 9mm fully auto out of just scrap. And so his book, this is his book on Amazon, because it's out of print. It's something like $3,000 to buy the book, which, by the way, would be something you should not do, but would be cheaper than buying a full auto that if you were paying all the tax stamp and everything and trying to find whoever is willing to sell.
Yeah, who's willing to sell one.
So you don't want to do that, Pete. But I'm just saying, if you search for that on Tor browser, I would not be at all surprised if you found a PDF. I mean, I really don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if you found a PDF of that. So don't do it. That would be a terrible thing. And that's going to get the alphabet boys at your house real quick. So seriously, don't do that, Pete.
Yeah, no, I would never even contemplate that. What's funny is, I'm a huge believer in 80% for a lot of reasons. One is I actually learned so much about both my ARs and my Glocks by doing 80%ers. And I like now when something goes wrong, it's like I don't worry about it because I know how to fix it. Man, I've literally built those. But then in California, of course, behind enemy lines here, they basically made it illegal to do an 80%er without notifying the Department of Justice and getting a serial number from them that they're going to, that you have to take to a gunsmith, that they have to engrave, that I think you got to send pictures that you actually did it, which defeats the whole purpose of an 80%er. And then they passed a law which is unconstitutional, but they still did it because it's California and they pretty much don't care about the Constitution here, which basically said if you had an 80%er, you had to tell the state of California about it and get a serial number and have it put on. Well, they didn't say 80%. They basically said if you have any firearm that doesn't have a serial, you got to have one put on it, which basically means they're going back to 1968, and it's completely unconstitutional. So. What I did is I actually bought a couple of Anderson lowers because I was like, whatever, dude, I am not even telling the state that I do this. So I bought Anderson lowers, put those on, and just destroyed the lowers on the Glocks that I'd made and the ARs because I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with the state of California. I don't like. You got to understand, guys, here. Some people will be like, oh, I'd never get rid of mine. Look, you get caught in California with that, you're going to jail for like 10, maybe 20 years. And it's like, do I really think I have the money to fight the state there?
Well, because they will make an example of you. And that's the big thing is, so like for so many of us, we're like, oh man, why would that even be an issue? Like, that's just crazy. And so you don't think about that. Like, it's not a big deal to me, but it's a big deal to them. And I have to make a decision. I'm like, am I willing to go to jail for 10 years while my kids grow up and all that? And this is where it gets really tricky on a lot of the issues of freedom here. It's the leverage that they have because they're willing to incarcerate you for ridiculous amounts of time over small things, arguably over accidental things. I don't know if you've heard about the people who have they flying with their conceal carry in checked bag, but they go through New York State or even maybe a California, and they're not from there. They don't know the rules, and so they can get in trouble for violating some law. I mean, and theoretically could end up 2 to 10 years in jail or more. because they broke a law that they didn't even know existed, and they thought they were doing everything right. And that kind of stuff irks me. But here I'm like, I believe in my freedom. I'm willing to do a lot, but I'm probably not willing to give up my kids' livelihoods for that freedom, or at least I'm not feeling that today. Maybe I am. Maybe I am willing if the rubber meets the road. But that's the kind of stuff that these are the decisions we're making right now in the United States of America. We shouldn't have to be making them.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Yeah. It's getting kind of jacked up.
So you want to hear some fun guns to kind of like brighten the mood, so that
I would actually. Tell me what a Free State guns look like.
Yeah, so some of you guys will find out here. I've been doing marketing for Lake Erie Arms in Northeast Ohio for the last couple of years, and
they're sponsoring this episode as well.
They're going to We're going to plug them at the end. Yeah, but they're just great. We love these guys. But one of the things that they've really cornered the market in is, they said, we can sell hunting rifles. We like that. We can sell pistols. They're a Glock Blue Label dealer. They can do all that kind of stuff. They're happy to do that. They like that. But man, there's a whole world in the tactical, be it ARs or tactical platform guns. And so they just started offering those in ways that a lot of other guns aren't. And man, we can't keep them in enough. So we do weekend events all throughout this summer, and we just did our tactical event where we featured all these really hard to get guns. And so I got exposed to guns even I don't get to touch most of the time. First thing I got to tell you about, because this is just kind of getting it out there. If anybody is familiar with the Q Honey Badger, Pete, have we talked about the Honey Badger? Have you ever?
I've seen your videos on Facebook about it.
Man, so the Honey Badger it's made by Q. Everybody's calling them the mad scientists of guns. The trigger on this thing is beautiful. I want to say it's like a 2.5 pound trigger. I mean, it's just wonderful. Everything's proprietary. It looks at first glance like a really pretty AR. It's kind of in a gold and silver look, like a muted gold. But then you start looking at all these, even the way that the buffer tube works, even the way that the stock slides, all of it's proprietary. It's like nothing. You start looking close at this gun, and it's just incredible. It's in 300 blackout. It's actually made by the people who in previous jobs actually invented the 300 blackout round. When you get the chance, check out that Q Honey Badger. It's really hard to get, but man, one of the great guns we've been featuring, highly recommending it. The other fun thing, speaking of 300 blackout, is we got our hands on
that's an AR pistol platform, right?
It is. It's considered a pistol. It's in that wonderful little.
That's why none of us in California
area.
Will be able to get it, because it won't be on our pistol roster.
You're going to have to make a trip to Freedom where we'll take you shooting all the magic stuff. And then you can get them, you can keep them in my house, you can come and shoot anytime. Woo! Right? So the other thing I'm really excited about is the Bad Tanker. Now, 7.5 inch barrel on this thing, 30 round magazine, 300 blackout. Here's what's really interesting. It's just this beautiful AR. It's got this kind of look that's kind of like a World War II battle plane, like a bomber. I've got that little, and then it's French walnut furniture. So imagine an AR with wood furniture. And just get the chance, look it up. It's the Bad Tanker. It's in 300 blackout. Anybody gets a chance, look at this gun. It is rivaling the Honey Badger for me. So that's why I had to set that. Like, the Honey Badger is the par excellence gun for as far as 300 blackout AR pistols go. But this Tanker, man, is getting up there. Great stuff. Lots of stuff I can recommend. But here was the last one I wanted to mention, Pete. As you start thinking about doing more of the two-gun stuff, Bad, the same company, Bad, and there's a longer name for it, and then I'm blanking out on, but Bad makes a 9mm AR. It's called the PCC, and it's like a 16-inch barrel. And so this thing is just a tack driver, but they make it in like this like crystal blue. And it just stands out. It's beautiful. Great thing to check out. They've got the 1 in 10 twist, which is kind of the ideal for that kind of a barrel on a 9mm. Ever get the chance, man. Sonic Silver Blue is, I think, the color of it.
Saw that one. I saw that video you did.
Oh, that gun is beautiful. Great for if you're doing 3-gun and you want to keep it all 9mm. And I know different people do different things. You know, the 2-gun and 3-gun world, everybody's got a different philosophy on what they're carrying, and a lot of people are still keeping it at 223 or 5.56. But if you want to do all 9mm on it, man, that's a really cool gun. Highly recommend it.
What's fun is a lot of the competitions that I do, they're shooting pistol caliber carabines. They're shooting their 9mm. I don't know what they shoot, and that's why they always win, right? They'll come in first and second because the rest of us are actually shooting pistols. They're shooting rifles that are claiming to be pistols. And so
right.
we just kind of joke and we're like, okay, well, take them off. Now look at the results. Okay, that's really where you stand.
You're exactly right, because they're playing a different kind of game right there.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, which, you know, as we're thinking about that, you've heard me brag on those micro Ronies a little bit.
Yeah.
I doubt that you're going to be able to get that in California.
Well, funny thing is, I was talking to the Glock store, so I saw him at the gun show, and I saw Lenny McGill, and so I went up to him, and I started talking. I'm like, hey, man, I thought they took the micro Roni out of California. And he goes, well, no one could point to a law to us. The Department of Justice in California couldn't point to a law. So we brought them back and we're selling them. And they haven't stopped us because there isn't a law. He goes, so there's not a law to sell it. There's not a law against to buy it. It's if you put your pistol in it, now we've got questions. He goes, so if you want to buy it and take it to Arizona, that's what a lot of people, and I'm like, you know, and he's skirting the issues because it's like he's the head of Glock store. He can't just say,
right,
hey, you know, buy it, use it, whatever. He's going to, of course, couch it as, if you want to take it to Arizona, take it to Nevada, that's what a lot of people do, and blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, so we can get them here. It's just if we put our pistol in it, that's where we're now up in the air.
It's like when the ATF ruling on shooting AR pistols with an arm brace that you weren't supposed to shoulder fire. And everybody's like, oh, of course not, officer. I would have never even thought of that.
That's the dumbest thing ever. Oh, my gosh.
It really is. No, but I tell you what, those micro Ronies, I feel compelled to mention them because I would have made fun of them. Like my first thought, I would have been like, this is a gimmick. And then I fired one of those things, and man, I mean, if I'm gonna buy an AR and a pistol caliber, and I'm gonna have a 9mm, sure, I'll just buy it. But to be able to throw my Glock right up in that thing, talk about for bugging out, or if you're on a budget and you want to do some of the 2-gun kind of stuff, and you just say, all right, well, I'm gonna throw my Glock up in this thing and see how we go. It is a pretty cool thing. We tend to sell out of those when we do an event.
Really?
And we have, you know, we tend to sell out. They're really popular. And usually we'll have somebody trying one out. And I just have the memory of I go out to the range with that thing and not scoffing because I'm like, this seems fun, but I just figured it would be a gimmick. And man, they just had a Hollow Sun. I think it was a Hollow Sun red dot on that thing, and just a regular Glock up in it. And you know, of course, from the shoulder shooting that thing, and I'm shooting at a little Smith & Wesson symbol about the size of a silver dollar, and I managed to put 3 rounds in that without ever having shot it before. And I'm not an amazing shot, but that thing took me from it took my shooting with a pistol level, with a Glock from, I don't know, from having a 6-inch grouping to having a, 2-inch grouping. That was pretty good as far as I'm concerned. That's, for me being a hack, to take me that far was pretty cool. So yeah, not a bad way to go. And now it sounds like you can get them. You just have to walk across the border technically to shoot it.
Because it has to do with the law on you can't have a shroud on the barrel, and so when you stick it in there, now that's a shroud. So it's California, man. Yeah. It's California.
Yeah.
I mean,
man,
what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
what are you gonna do except stock up on guns and ammo, because when it hits the fan, and it will, you want to have that.
Yeah.
I mean,
you and the other Boogaloo boys want to be ready.
Dude, I'm telling you, our state is going bankrupt at any moment. And when that happens, I don't know what's going to happen, man. Because that could just drag down the whole nation with it. It's so big.
California does make up a huge chunk of our economy.
Yeah.
Well, and this is going to be slightly off topic, but there is a candidate running, if I'm trying to run under the Libertarian Party, and his platform. Now, I'm not saying this isn't crazy, but his platform is that the federal government declares bankruptcy, and we moved, and like that's how we deal with the national debt, and then we move to just state sovereignty and free commerce of goods between the states. And I'm like, man, that's bold, but. Yeah, you got a point on that whole bankruptcy thing. Things are not looking good.
Here's my fear with that, because I've been saying for years that eventually something like that's going to have to happen. Like, my background is as a registered investment advisor. I had my own company for years. And so I look at the financial situation that our government's in, and eventually they're going to have to, in our lifetime, devalue the dollar. Like, no one thinks it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Guarantee it. It's going to happen at some point. And I'm afraid of what's going to happen with China at that point, because their entire economy, you got to understand, like, you've got a communist country there. Everyone goes, oh yeah, but we're still buying and selling with them. No, their entire economy is based on the fact that they own our debt. And so when people look at it, they go, what's the China economy based off of? Well, we own America's debt, and their debt is backed by the full faith and trust in the U.S. government. Like, you, in a communist environment, you can't trust the economy. Like, it's not a real, market-driven economy. So I think it's going to lead to a war, which I believe will be another gigantic world war, because what happens when all of a sudden you've now killed China's economy, but they still got all the money, or, not the money, they still got all the ammunition and, stuff, and they're just going to, fine. Well, we're going to go take your land. You owed it to us.
That's well, and what I try to tell people, because the dollar is essentially fiat currency now. We're way off in a whole nother realm here, but it does relate. But because the dollar is essentially fiat currency, it's ultimately backed by the American workforce, right? Like, your social security number is essentially what they're backing it by our work. And that's where it starts getting tricky. We have, our population is not growing as fast here. There's all kinds of things going real wonky, and the American dollar is basically backed by just the belief that it means something.
Right.
And things can go sideways real quick. And when they do, you better be ready to defend yourself. Which is
you better be packing.
Podcast. Yeah. And you have an appropriate amount of ammunition and be ready to defend. I'm telling everybody, you know what? Forget all the crazy stuff that could go on. Just a storm can do a lot of bad damage to an area, and then they can't get, Walmart filled up with food fast enough. Gotta have, 30, 60 days of food stored just for the basic stuff. So we're going to have to start putting on the tinfoil hats if you let me keep talking like this, Pete. So
this podcast is going to get better and better. I can already tell.
This starts with like, hey, let's talk about concealment. And by the end of it, I'm going to be like, and that's why I make moonshine out of corn.
Oh, do you? No. Here's one thing you should never do, Dan. You should never make moonshine out of corn.
So, of course, I don't make it out of corn.
I love it, man. Well, we're way over on our time
we are,
today.
Man. This is fun, though.
I know, right? So why don't you give Lake Erie their plug?
Yeah, so Lake Erie Arms has been at it for the last maybe 5 years. They're one of the fastest growing gun stores in Northern Ohio, and they're just great. One of the things we've noticed is a lot of people that do AR builds, they will do them totally on mail order. So you're not going to get to see the parts, you're not going to handle the parts. We offer a vast array of AR build parts, but we provide them at the same kind of prices you're going to be paying online, but you're going to get to handle it, and you're going to get to talk to an expert. You're going to get to talk to people who build ARs all the time, have seen all that can go right and all that can go wrong. Lake Erie Arms is where you want to come in, check things out, learn a little bit more. Now, I know I just plugged ARs, but it just so happens that they have a Henry Repeating Arms event coming up in July that you're going to want to get to. We provide free food, free shooting, and free drawing every time. Usually we're giving away a golden boy or something like it. I don't know what's up for this week, but it's going to be something like that. So if you're in the region, if you're within a 4-mile drive, you're going to want to get to this event, just do the shooting, have a great time, maybe buy yourself a Henry rifle. But Lake Erie Arms, you can check them out at lea.net, and would love to hear from you.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining us for the From Concealment podcast, and we'll be talking to you next week. Take care, everybody.
You've been listening to the From Concealment podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.